The crystal glass shattered against Maddox Lane's chest before he even saw it coming. Champagne soaked through his black server uniform, the liquid cold and sharp as it dripped down to his swollen belly. The ballroom went silent. 200 faces turned toward him. Chicago's wealthiest elites, Mafia lieutenants in $1,000 suits, politicians who smiled for cameras and laundered money after midnight. Maddox's hands moved instinctively to shield his stomach. 6 months pregnant, visible, undeniable. "You're disgusting," the man snarled, loud enough for everyone to hear, his face twisted with contempt. "Males like you shouldn't breed." Laughter rippled through the crowd, not kind laughter, the cruel kind that stuck to skin like oil. Maddox kept his head down. He'd learned years ago in foster care that eye contact only made it worse. His fingers trembled as champagne pooled at his feet, mixing with the shame that burned hotter than the alcohol on his skin. Across the ballroom, Alpha Don Kaelen Rourke stopped mid-conversation. The most feared mafia boss in Chicago didn't move like other men. He didn't rush. He didn't shout. He simply turned his head, and the temperature in the room dropped 10 degrees. Kalen's presence was a blade pressed against every throat in the room. Tall, broad-shouldered, with dark skin that seemed carved from stone and eyes that calculated death before most people finished their sentences. He wore power the way other men wore cologne, impossible to ignore, suffocating if you got too close. "Hi viewers, kindly tell us where you're watching from and what time it is." Everyone saw him move. The crowd parted like water before a shark. Kalin crossed the ballroom in silence. His footsteps echoed against marble floors. No one spoke, no one breathed. He stopped in front of the man who'd thrown the glass. "Leave." The word landed like a bullet. The man laughed nervously, glancing around for support. "Kalin, I was just..." "Leave." Kalin didn't raise his voice. He didn't have to. 2 security guards appeared from the shadows, gripping the man's arms. He struggled, tried to smile, tried to turn it into a joke, but Kalen's expression never changed. Cold, certain, final. The man was dragged through the side exit. His protests faded into nothing. Kalin turned to Maddox. For the first time in months, someone looked at him without disgust. Kalen's gaze moved from Maddox's face down to his belly, then back up again. Something flickered in those dark eyes, something Maddox couldn't name. "Clean yourself up," Kalin said quietly. "Take the rest of the night off." Maddox nodded, unable to speak. His throat was too tight. As he turned to leave, Kalen's hand brushed his arm. That's when Kalin saw them. Bruises. Dark purple marks peeking out from under Maddox's sleeve, fresh enough to still be tender. They wrapped around his forearm like fingers had gripped too hard. Kalen's jaw tightened. Maddox pulled his arm away quickly, but it was too late. Kalin had seen. The Alpha's eyes went cold in a way that made the earlier confrontation look gentle. "Who touched you?" Maddox shook his head frantically. "No one, I fell." "Don't lie to me." The command in Kalen's voice made Maddox's knees weak, but it wasn't cruelty, it was something worse. "Protection." Maddox had spent his entire life learning to recognize danger. He knew what predators looked like. He knew how abusers smiled before they struck. But this was different. Kalin was dangerous, yes, but not to him. And that terrified Maddox more than any beating ever had. Because across the ballroom, standing near the champagne tower in a dress that cost more than Maddox would earn in a year, Seraphina Vale watched them both. Kalen's fiancée. The ice bride. The woman everyone feared almost as much as Kalin himself. She smiled. It was the kind of smile that made Maddox's stomach turn, the kind that promised consequences, the kind that reminded him exactly who had given him those bruises in the first place. Seraphina raised her glass in a silent toast. Maddox's breath caught in his throat. Kalin was still staring at him, waiting for an answer, waiting for the truth. But Maddox couldn't speak, because if he told Kalin the truth, Seraphina would make good on her promise. She'd kill everyone Maddox had ever loved. Starting with his foster siblings. Maddox took a step back, his voice barely a whisper. "Please, don't protect me, she'll kill you." What do you think Seraphina will do next? Drop your theories in the comments. Maddox barely made it to the staff corridor before his legs gave out. He leaned against the cold concrete wall, trying to breathe through the panic crushing his chest. The hallway was empty, lit only by a single flickering bulb that made shadows dance across the floor. His hands pressed against his belly, feeling the baby shift inside him. 7 months ago, he'd been working 3 jobs just to afford a room in a shelter. 7 months ago, he'd thought the worst thing that could happen to him already had. He'd been wrong. The door at the end of the hall opened. Maddox's entire body went rigid. Seraphina stepped into the corridor like she owned it, and maybe she did. She owned everything in Kalen's world, the mansion, the staff, the loyalty of everyone who feared disappointing her. She wore a black dress that clung to her like a second skin, her dark hair pulled back so tight it made her face look even sharper, beautiful in the way a knife was beautiful. She didn't rush, she never rushed. "You're trembling," Seraphina said, her voice smooth as silk and twice as suffocating. Maddox pressed harder against the wall, wishing he could disappear into it. Seraphina stopped inches away from him, close enough that he could smell her perfume, expensive, floral, the kind that probably cost more than his life. "Did you enjoy your little moment with Kalin?" she asked. Maddox shook his head quickly. I didn't say anything, I swear." "Good," Seraphina's smile didn't reach her eyes, "because you remember what happens if you do, don't you?" Maddox's mind flashed to the photos she'd shown him weeks ago. His foster siblings, Janny, Marcus, little Destiny, who was only 9 years old, all of them smiling in pictures Seraphina's people had taken without them knowing. All of them one phone call away from disappearing. "I remember," Maddox whispered. Seraphina reached out and placed a hand on his belly. Maddox flinched, but he couldn't move. His body had learned to freeze when she touched him, learned that fighting back only made things worse. "This baby," Seraphina said softly, "is the only reason you're still breathing. Do you understand that?" Maddox nodded. "Good boy." She patted his stomach like he was a pet. Then she pulled a small glass bottle from her purse, clear liquid inside, unmarked. "Drink this, for the nausea." Maddox stared at the bottle. He'd been drinking them for weeks now, ever since Seraphina first gave them to him. They tasted metallic, wrong, like something his body wanted to reject. But he'd learned not to refuse her. His hands shook as he took the bottle. "All of it," Seraphina said, watching him closely. Maddox unscrewed the cap. The liquid smelled bitter, chemical. He closed his eyes and drank it in one long swallow, fighting the urge to gag. When he finished, Seraphina took the empty bottle back. "Remember who owns your breath," she said quietly. Then she turned and walked away, her heels clicking against the concrete like a countdown clock. Maddox stayed frozen against the wall until her footsteps faded completely. Only then did he let himself slide down to the floor. His hands were still shaking. The metallic taste coated his tongue, making his stomach turn. He'd learned to recognize the signs now, the way his heart would start racing 15 minutes after drinking it, the way his vision would blur at the edges, the way the baby would go still for hours afterward. He wasn't stupid. He knew what Seraphina was giving him. Suppressants, the kind that weakened an omega system, the kind that made pregnancies unstable, the kind that could kill a baby if given in high enough doses. But what could he do? If he refused, Janny would die. Marcus would die. Little Destiny would disappear into the same trafficking network Maddox had barely escaped years ago. If he told Kalin, Seraphina would know. She always knew. And if he ran, where would he go? He had no money, no family, no protection. Just a belly full of someone else's baby, and a body that society treated like garbage. Maddox pressed his forehead against his knees, and tried not to cry. He'd survived foster care. He'd survived being trafficked at 16. He'd survived every man who ever thought he could be bought or used or thrown away. He could survive this too. He had to. Because the baby inside him, no matter how it got there, no matter whose child it was, deserved a chance. Maddox placed both hands over his stomach and made a promise in the silence of that empty hallway. "I'll protect you," he whispered, "no matter what it costs me." The baby kicked. Just once. Like an answer. 3 floors above, in Kalen's private security office, a monitor flickered to life. The security chief rewound the footage, watching Seraphina enter the staff corridor at 3:17 a.m., watching her corner Maddox, watching her hand him something. He zoomed in on the bottle. Unmarked clear liquid. The security chief reached for his phone. Kalin answered on the first ring. "Sir," the security chief said carefully, "you need to see this." "Do you think Kalin will figure out the truth in time? Let us know below." Maddox collapsed in the West Wing hallway at exactly 9:47 a.m. He'd been carrying a tray of breakfast dishes when his vision tunneled and his knees buckled. The tray clattered to the marble floor, porcelain shattering into white fragments that scattered like broken teeth. He didn't remember hitting the ground. He only remembered the pain, sharp and twisting in his abdomen, like something inside him was tearing apart. Then hands, strong hands catching him before his head cracked against marble. "Get the doctor, now." Kalen's voice cut through the fog. Maddox tried to speak, tried to say he was fine, but his mouth wouldn't form words. His vision swam with dark spots. Kalin lifted him like he weighed nothing. Maddox's head lolled against the Alpha's chest, and he could hear Kalen's heartbeat, steady, controlled, nothing like the panic flooding Maddox's own veins. "Stay with me," Kalin said quietly. Maddox wanted to, he really did. But the darkness swallowed him whole. When he woke up, he was in a bed so soft it felt like floating. The room smelled like lavender and antiseptic. Medical equipment beeped steadily beside him. An IV drip fed clear liquid into his arm. Dr. Kamani stood at the foot of the bed, reviewing something on a tablet. She was a middle-aged woman with kind eyes and steady hands, the kind of doctor who didn't flinch at blood or secrets. Kalin sat in a chair by the window, arms crossed, watching. He looked like he'd been there for hours. "The baby," Maddox croaked. Dr. Kamani looked up, stable, for now. The relief lasted exactly 2 seconds before she added, "But we need to talk." Maddox's stomach dropped. Dr. Kamani moved closer, lowering her voice even though Kalin could clearly hear everything. "Maddox, I need you to be honest with me. Have you been taking any medications? Anything that wasn't prescribed?" Maddox's throat went dry. "No," he lied. Dr. Kamani didn't look convinced. She glanced at Kalin, then back at Maddox. "Your blood work shows traces of omega suppressants, high doses, the kind that destabilize pregnancies." The room went silent. Kalin stood up slowly. When he moved to the bed, every muscle in his body looked coiled tight, like he was holding back something violent. "Who gave them to you?" Kalen's voice was terrifyingly calm. Maddox shook his head. "No one, Don't lie to me." The command in those words made Maddox's omega instincts scream. Submit, obey, tell the truth. But he couldn't. "I found them," Maddox said quickly, "in the staff medication room. I thought they'd help with the nausea." It was a terrible lie. He knew it the second it left his mouth. Dr. Kamani's expression said she knew it too. But she didn't push. Instead, she held up her tablet, showing Maddox an image of his own ribs. Bruises, dark purple and green, mottled across his skin in clear handprint patterns. "These are fresh," Dr. Kamani said quietly, "no more than a week old." Kalen's hands curled into fists. "Maddox," he said, and there was something dangerous in his voice now, something that made the air feel too thick to breathe. "Who touched you?" Maddox's chest tightened. He could feel Seraphina's threat like a noose around his neck. "Tell him and they die." "I fell," Maddox whispered. "Bullshit." The word cracked through the room like a whip. Kalin leaned closer, his face inches from Maddox's. This close, Maddox could see the rage simmering behind those dark eyes, barely leashed. "You didn't fall, you didn't find suppressants by accident, and you sure as hell didn't bruise yourself." Kalen's voice dropped to something almost gentle. "Tell me who's hurting you." Maddox's eyes burned with unshed tears. He wanted to tell. God, he wanted to so badly it hurt worse than the bruises. But he couldn't. "Please," Maddox begged, "just let it go." Kalin stared at him for a long moment, then he straightened, stepping back. "Dr. Kamani," he said without looking away from Maddox, "where would someone get suppressants like these?" Dr. Kamani hesitated. "They're prescription grade, restricted. You'd need access to a private medical supply or..." She trailed off. Kalen's jaw tightened. "Or what?" "Or access to your personal medical vault." The words hung in the air like a death sentence. Kalin turned to Dr. Kamani slowly. Who has access to that vault? Only you and Miss Vale, sir. The temperature in the room plummeted. Kalin didn't move, didn't speak, but Maddox could see the gears turning behind his eyes, calculations being made, conclusions being drawn. Then Kalin walked out of the room without another word. Dr. Kamani exhaled slowly. You need to tell him the truth. Maddox shook his head. I can't. She'll kill the baby if you don't stop taking those suppressants. She'll kill people I love if I do. Dr. Kamani's expression softened with something like pity. Then you'd better hope Kalin figures it out before it's too late. Kalin walked straight to Seraphina's private suite. He didn't knock. The room was empty, pristine, everything in its place. Expensive perfume on the vanity, silk dresses in the closet, jewelry laid out like trophies. He moved through the space methodically, opening drawers, checking cabinets. In the back of her jewelry drawer, hidden beneath a velvet tray, he found it. A small glass vial. Clear liquid. Unmarked. Kalin held it up to the light, watching the liquid swirl. Then he pocketed it and walked out. His security chief was waiting in the hall. Sir, run every background check on Seraphina Vale, Kalin said quietly. Every phone record, every bank transaction, every person she's spoken to in the last 6 months. The security chief nodded, looking for anything specific. Kalin's expression went cold. Everything. Who do you think Seraphina is really working for? Comment your theories. Seraphina smiled at the dinner table like nothing in the world could touch her. She looked perfect, she always looked perfect. Tonight she wore emerald green silk that matched her eyes, diamond earrings that caught the chandelier light, lipstick the color of blood. She laughed at the right moments during Kalin's business conversations with his lieutenants, touched his arm with just the right amount of affection, played the role of devoted fiancée like she'd been born for it. Maybe she had been. Kalin watched her from across the table, his expression unreadable. He'd been watching her for 3 days now, studying her movements, cataloguing every smile, every touch, every word. She was good, he'd give her that. But everyone made mistakes eventually. Kalin, Seraphina said, leaning closer, her perfume wrapped around him like smoke. You've been distracted lately, is everything all right? Fine. She tilted her head, studying him the way a cat studied a mouse. It's that server, isn't it? The pregnant one. Kalin's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. Seraphina's smile widened. I heard he collapsed. Such a shame. Male omegas are so fragile. He's under medical supervision. Of course, Seraphina's fingers traced patterns on his arm. You always take such good care of your people. It's one of the things I admire about you. Kalin said nothing. One of his lieutenants cleared his throat awkwardly. The tension at the table had become suffocating. Seraphina stood gracefully. If you'll excuse me, gentlemen, I have some calls to make. She kissed Kalin's cheek before leaving. The second she was gone, the lieutenant exhaled. Boss, you good? Kalin didn't answer. He was already pulling out his phone, checking the message his security chief had sent 3 minutes ago. Found something, office, now. The security office was tucked in the basement, surrounded by concrete and surveillance monitors that tracked every inch of Kalin's mansion. His security chief, Dante, looked like he hadn't slept in days, probably because he hadn't. Talk, Kalin said. Dante pulled up encrypted data on 3 screens simultaneously. Seraphina's been careful, very careful, but 3 weeks ago she made a mistake. He zoomed in on a phone record, a single outgoing call, routed through offshore servers, buried under layers of encryption. It's who? Dante hesitated. You're not going to like this. I already don't like it, show me. Dante pulled up a name. Kalin's entire body went still. Lucincrowe. The name hit him like a bullet to the chest. Lucian Crowe, the alpha who'd burned Kalin's shipping yards 5 years ago, the man who'd killed 3 of Kalin's best soldiers, the rival boss who'd spent half a decade trying to dismantle everything Kalin had built. The enemy Kalin had sworn to destroy. There's more, Dante said quietly. He pulled up a series of messages, decrypted and laid bare. Kalin read them in silence. Each word felt like glass cutting deeper. He trusts me completely. Access to the offshore accounts confirmed. Legal assets transferred to shell companies. He won't know until it's too late. Timeline 6 weeks. After that, the empire is ours. Kalen's hands curled into fists, so tight his knuckles went white. Dante scrolled down to the final message. The pup is mine, not his. The Omega will be the perfect distraction. Once Kalen's guard is down, I'll finish him, then everything becomes ours. The room went silent except for the hum of computer fans. Kalin stared at the screen, his mind calculating, connecting, understanding. Maddox's pregnancy. The timing. The fear in his eyes. The bruises. The suppressants. It all made sense now. The baby isn't mine, Kalin said quietly. No, sir, Dante confirmed. Based on the timeline in these messages, Maddox was likely taken before he ever started working here. And Seraphina knew. Yes, sir, she orchestrated it. Kalen's expression went colder than Dante had ever seen it. Keep digging, Kalin said. I want to know every move she's planning, every person she's contacted, every account she's touched. Sir, what are you going to do? Kalin stood, adjusting his suit jacket with movements that looked calm but felt lethal. I'm going to let her think she's winning. Upstairs in the medical wing, Maddox sat on the edge of his bed. He couldn't sleep. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw Seraphina's smile, heard her voice promising death to everyone he loved. A soft knock made him flinch. The door opened. Kalin stepped inside. Maddox's heart hammered against his ribs. I wasn't. Relax, Kalin closed the door behind him. I'm not here to interrogate you. Maddox didn't relax. He couldn't. Not with Kalin looking at him like that, like he could see straight through every lie. Kalin sat in the chair Dr. Kamani had used earlier. For a long moment, he just looked at Maddox. Then he spoke. That baby you're carrying, his voice was soft, too soft. It's not mine, is it? Maddox's breath caught. Don't lie, Kalin added, I already know. Tears burned in Maddox's eyes. His hands moved instinctively to his belly, protective, desperate. Please, Maddox whispered, please don't hurt him. Kalen's expression shifted, something Maddox couldn't name flickering across his face. I'm not going to hurt you, Kalin said quietly, or the baby. Then what do you want? Kalin leaned forward, elbows on his knees, eyes locked on Maddox's. I want you to tell me everything. Maddox shook his head frantically. I can't, she'll. She'll what? Kalen's voice hardened. Kill you, hurt the baby, threaten people you care about. Maddox's silence was answer enough. Kalin stood slowly. Maddox, look at me. Maddox forced himself to meet Kalen's eyes. I know Seraphina's been hurting you, Kalin said. I know she's been giving you suppressants, and I know she's working with someone. Maddox's breath hitched. What I don't know, Kalin continued, is why, or who's really pulling the strings. Maddox's hands shook. He wanted to speak, wanted to tell Kalin everything. But Seraphina's voice echoed in his mind. Remember who owns your breaths. If you can't protect me, Maddox whispered, how can I trust you? Kalen's expression went deadly serious. Because the people who hurt you, his voice dropped to something that sounded like a promise. I'm going to destroy them. What do you think Maddox should do? Drop your answer below. The name appeared on Kalen's screen at 2:34 a.m. He hadn't slept, couldn't sleep, not with everything unraveling in ways that made his instincts scream. Dante had sent 3 files. Phone records, bank transfers, encrypted messages that had taken 48 hours to crack. But it was the name at the top of the final document that made Kalen's blood turn to ice. LUCINCROWE. Kalin read the messages twice. Then a third time. Each word felt like a nail being driven into his chest. Seraphina hadn't just betrayed him. She'd sold him out to the one man Kalin had sworn to bury. Lucian Crowe was a ghost in Chicago's underworld, an alpha who operated in shadows, who burned everything he touched, who'd spent 5 years systematically destroying pieces of Kalin's empire whenever Kalin wasn't looking. 2 years ago, Lucian's crew had firebombed Kalin's shipping yard. 3 men died in that fire. Good men, loyal men. Kalin had hunted Lucian for months after that. But Lucian was smart. He never showed his face, never left evidence, never gave Kalin anything to retaliate against except smoke and corpses. And now Kalin understood why. Because Lucian had been planting a weapon inside Kalin's house the entire time. Seraphina. Kalin scrolled through the messages again, his jaw tight. He trusts me completely. The accounts are almost fully transferred. 6 more weeks, then we move. The Omega is perfect. Kalin's instincts won't let him ignore a pregnant male. He'll be distracted. Kalin's hands curled into fists. Then he reached the final message. The one that made his vision blur with rage. The pup is mine, not his. Kalin stared at the words. The pup. Maddox's baby. Lucian's baby. The timeline suddenly made horrifying sense. Maddox had started working in Kalin's mansion 6 months ago. Quiet, efficient, never causing trouble. But he'd already been pregnant when he arrived. Which meant someone had put that baby inside him before Seraphina ever brought him here. Kalin's mind flashed to the bruises on Maddox's ribs, the terror in his eyes, the way he flinched whenever Seraphina came near. The Omega will be the perfect distraction. Lucian hadn't just used Maddox. He'd weaponized him. And Seraphina had delivered him straight into Kalin's home, like a gift-wrapped bomb. Kalin stood from his desk, moving to the window. Outside, Chicago glittered like broken glass under streetlights. His empire, his city, his rules. And someone had been trying to take it from him piece by piece, while he slept beside the enemy. Kalin pulled out his phone. Dante answered immediately, "Sir. I want every property Lucian Crowe has ever touched, every shell company, every contact, every dollar he's moved in the last year." "Yes, sir." "And Dante." "Sir." "Keep this quiet, Seraphina can't know I'm watching." "Understood." Kalin hung up. Then he left his office and walked through silent hallways to the medical wing. Maddox was awake. He sat curled on the bed, one hand pressed to his belly, the other gripping the blanket like it was the only thing keeping him tethered to reality. When Kalin stepped inside, Maddox flinched. "I'm not here to hurt you," Kalin said quietly. Maddox didn't look convinced. Kalin closed the door behind him and locked it. The sound made Maddox's breathing quicken. "Relax," Kalin said. "I locked it so no one interrupts us." Maddox's eyes darted to the door, then back to Kalin. Kalin moved closer slowly, the way someone might approach a wounded animal. He stopped at the foot of the bed. "I need you to answer one question," Kalin said, "and I need you to tell me the truth." Maddox swallowed hard. "What question?" Kalin's eyes locked onto his. "Who put that child inside you?" The room went silent. Maddox's face drained of color. "I can't." "You can," Kalin interrupted, "and you will." Tears welled in Maddox's eyes. "If I tell you, people will die." "People are already dying," Kalin said coldly. "Seraphina's been poisoning you slowly. That baby might not survive another week if you keep taking what she gives you." Maddox's breath hitched. Kalin stepped closer, his voice softening just slightly. "I know you're scared. I know she's threatened you. But I can't protect you if you won't tell me what's happening." "You can't protect me at all," Maddox's voice cracked. "You don't understand what she's capable of." "Then make me understand." Maddox shook his head, tears spilling down his cheeks now. "She'll kill them. She'll kill Janny and Marcus and Destiny and—" "Who are they?" "My foster siblings." Maddox's voice broke completely. "They're all I have, and she knows where they are. She has people watching them. She showed me pictures." Kalin's expression went dangerously calm. "How long has she been threatening them?" "Since before I even started working here." "And the baby's father?" Maddox's hands trembled violently. I didn't want. I know, Kalin's voice gentled. Just tell me his name. Maddox looked up at Kalin with eyes full of terror and shame. Lucian Crow, he whispered. Kalin didn't react. He'd already known. But hearing Maddox say it out loud made the rage inside him crystallize into something cold and lethal. He took me, Maddox continued, his voice barely audible now. 3 months before I came here, he drugged me, used me, marked me. And Seraphina. Maddox's face crumpled. She was there, she watched, his voice broke. She smiled. Kalin's hands curled into fists, so tight his nails bit into his palms. Then she brought me here, Maddox whispered. Told me to keep my head down, do my job, stay pregnant. Said if I told you anything, she'd kill everyone I ever loved. Kalin was silent for a long moment. Then he did something that shocked Maddox to his core. He knelt. Alpha Don Kaelen Rourke, the most feared Mafia boss in Chicago, knelt on the floor in front of a trembling Omega. He reached out slowly and placed one hand over Maddox's belly. Maddox froze. This child, Kalin said quietly, is innocent, you're innocent, and no one, not Seraphina, not Lucian, not anyone, is going to hurt either of you again. How can you promise that? Kalin looked up at him, and Maddox saw something in those dark eyes that looked almost like gentleness. Because the people who hurt you are about to learn what happens when someone touches what I protect. Maddox's breath caught. But I'm not yours to protect. Kalin's expression hardened into something absolute. You are now. In her suite 3 floors above, Seraphina smiled at her phone. A new message from Lucian. Timeline moved up 2 weeks, can you handle it? She typed back quickly. He suspects nothing, the Omega's almost broken, everything's in place. Lucian's response came instantly. Good, when this is over, Chicago is ours. Seraphina set her phone down and looked at herself in the mirror. Perfect hair, perfect makeup, perfect lies. She'd played this role for 2 years. 2 years of smiling at Kalin, touching him, pretending to love him. All while slowly dismantling everything he'd built. In 2 weeks, Kalin would be dead. And she would stand over his corpse wearing white. Do you think Kalin can stop them in time? Let us know what you think. Maddox's hands wouldn't stop shaking. He sat in Kalin's study, surrounded by mahogany bookshelves and leather furniture that cost more than everything he'd ever owned combined. The curtains were drawn, the door locked. 2 guards stood outside, not to keep him in but to keep everyone else out. Especially Seraphina. Kalin sat across from him, silent, waiting. I need you to tell me everything, Kalin said finally, from the beginning. Maddox's throat tightened. I already told you. No, you told me pieces. I need the whole story. Maddox pressed his hands against his belly, feeling the baby move. The movement used to comfort him. Now it just reminded him of how this child came to exist. 3 months before I started working here, Maddox began, his voice barely above a whisper. I was living in a shelter on the south side. I had 2 jobs, one at a diner, one cleaning office buildings at night. Kalin listened without interrupting. One night I was walking home from the diner. It was late, around midnight. Maddox's breathing quickened. A car pulled up beside me, black SUV, tinted windows. He could still see it in his mind, still feel the way his stomach had dropped when the doors opened. 3 men grabbed me. I tried to fight, tried to scream, but his voice cracked. They drugged me, some kind of injection. Everything went dark. Kalin's expression remained neutral, but his eyes had gone cold. When I woke up, I was in a basement, concrete walls, no windows, just a mattress on the floor and a bucket in the corner. Maddox's hands trembled harder. I was there for 2 weeks. And Lucian. Maddox flinched at the name. He came every day, sometimes twice a day. Tears burned in Maddox's eyes. He'd force me to drink something first, made me dizzy, made everything feel like it was happening underwater. Kalin's jaw tightened. Then Maddox couldn't finish the sentence. He didn't need to. The silence between them was heavy enough to crush. Did he mark you? Kalin asked quietly. Maddox nodded, touching the back of his neck where the bite scar still throbbed sometimes. On the 5th day, he wanted to make sure I couldn't bond with anyone else. Kalin's hands curled into fists. And Seraphina, his voice was dangerously calm. She was there the day he marked me. Maddox's voice broke completely now. She stood in the corner with her phone, recording it. She was smiling, Kalin. She was smiling while he... Maddox couldn't continue. Sobs tore through his chest, raw and broken. Kalin stood and moved to the window, his back rigid. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. Then Kalin turned back around. Why did they let you go? Maddox wiped his eyes with shaking hands. They didn't let me go, they placed me. Explain. 2 weeks after Lucian marked me, Seraphina came to the basement. She had clothes for me, clean ones, expensive ones. Maddox's voice was hollow now. She told me I was going to work in your mansion, that I'd serve at your events, keep my head down, stay pregnant. And if you didn't? Maddox's face crumpled. She showed me pictures. My foster siblings, Janny, Marcus, Destiny. She knew where they lived, where they worked, where Destiny went to school. Kalin's expression went lethal. She said if I told you anything, if I tried to run, if I did anything except exactly what she told me to do, they'd disappear. Maddox's voice dropped to a whisper. She said Janny would end up in a trafficking ring, Marcus would be found in the river, and Destiny, his voice broke again, Destiny would just vanish. 9 years old and she'd just vanish. Kalin was silent for a long moment. Then he pulled out his phone and made a call. Dante, I need 3 people picked up immediately. Protective custody. Names are Janny, Marcus, and Destiny. He looked at Maddox. Last name. Carter, Maddox whispered. Carter, Kalin repeated into the phone. South Side, I'm sending you their addresses now. Do it quietly. No one can know. He hung up and looked at Maddox. They'll be safe by morning. Maddox stared at him, disbelief and hope warring on his face. You do that. I already am. Fresh tears spilled down Maddox's cheeks, but this time they weren't from fear. Kalin moved closer, kneeling in front of him again. Listen to me carefully, Kalin said. Seraphina doesn't get to hurt you anymore. Lucian doesn't get to touch you anymore. And that baby, he placed a hand over Maddox's belly, that baby is going to be born safe. Do you understand? Maddox nodded, unable to speak. But I need you to do something for me, Kalin continued. What? I need you to pretend nothing's changed. Can you do that? Maddox's stomach dropped. You want me to keep acting like you're still scared of her, like you haven't told me anything. Kalin's eyes were intense. Seraphina's planning something big, and I need her to think she's still in control until I'm ready to move. How long? 1 week, maybe less. Maddox's hands shook. I don't know if I can. You've survived this long, Kalin said quietly. You can survive 1 more week. What if she finds out? Kalin's expression went cold. She won't. But across the mansion, in her private suite, Seraphina was already suspicious. She'd noticed the locked study, the guards outside, the way Kalin had been looking at her lately, like he was calculating something. She pulled out her phone and typed a message to Lucian. Something's wrong, Kalin's acting different. The response came within seconds. Handle it or I will. Seraphina stared at the message. Then she opened her contacts and scrolled to a name she hadn't used in months. A name that made her smile. She hit dial. The voice that answered was cold and efficient. It's time, Seraphina said quietly. Activate the failsafe. Are you sure? Yes, if Kalin knows something, we move now. She hung up. Then she walked to her closet and pulled out a black case hidden behind her shoes. Inside was a detonator. Small, simple, deadly. She'd planted explosives throughout the mansion 6 months ago, hidden in walls and ventilation shafts, waiting for the right moment. If Kalin had figured out her plan, she'd blow everything to hell and walk away before the smoke cleared. She'd lose the Empire, yes. But at least Kalin would be dead. And that was enough. Do you think Maddox can keep up the act? Comment below. The mansion staff evacuated at 4:17 a.m. Kalin's orders were quiet, efficient, absolute. One by one, servants and guards were pulled aside, given envelopes thick with cash, and told to leave immediately. No questions, no delays. By sunrise, the mansion was nearly empty. Only Kalin's inner circle remained: Dante, 3 trusted lieutenants, and Dr. Kamani. And Maddox. Maddox sat in a safehouse vehicle in the underground garage, his hands gripping the door handle, watching Kalin through the tinted window. "Why isn't he coming?" Maddox asked. Dante stood beside the vehicle, arms crossed. "Because he's setting a trap." "For who?" "For everyone." Before Maddox could ask more, Dante's phone buzzed. He read the message and cursed under his breath. "What?" Maddox demanded. Dante looked at him with an expression that made Maddox's stomach drop. "Seraphina just sent a coded message. She knows something's wrong." "How?" "Doesn't matter, she's accelerating the timeline." Maddox's heart hammered. "What does that mean?" Dante's jaw tightened. "It means whatever she was planning for 2 weeks from now is happening tonight." Upstairs, Kalin stood in the main ballroom, the same room where Maddox had been humiliated weeks ago. Now it was set for a wedding reception. White flowers, crystal chandeliers, tables arranged in perfect rows. Seraphina had insisted on hosting the celebration here, claiming it would show unity to their allies. Kalin had agreed, because he knew exactly what she was really planning. Dante entered through the side door, his expression grim. "Sweeps complete," Dante said. "We found them." "How many?" 12 devices, C4, wired to a remote detonator. Dante held up a small black box, now disabled. She was going to blow the whole building. Kalin stared at the device. 12 bombs. Enough to level the entire mansion. Enough to kill everyone inside. Including him. "Where is she now?" Kalin asked. "Her suite, getting ready for tonight." Kalin's expression went dangerously calm. "Good, let her think everything's normal." "Sir, if she realizes we found the explosives." "She won't." Kalin turned to face Dante. "Because you're going to put them back." Dante's eyes widened. "What?" "Not the real ones, dummies, but I want them in the exact same locations. If she checks, she needs to see them still there." "And then?" Kalin's smile was cold. "Then we give her exactly what she wants." At 7:00 p.m., guests began arriving. Chicago's elite, rival bosses, politicians with blood on their hands and smiles on their faces, business partners who'd sell out their own mothers for the right price. Everyone who mattered in Kalin's world. Everyone who'd been waiting to see if the most feared alpha in Chicago would finally settle down. They filled the ballroom in designer suits and diamond jewelry, champagne glasses in hand, cameras flashing. Seraphina stood at the center of it all in a white dress that looked like it cost more than a house. She was radiant, confident, perfect. She caught Kalin's eye across the room and smiled. Kalin smiled back. Neither smile reached their eyes. In the safehouse vehicle, Maddox watched a live feed on Dante's tablet. "Why did he invite all those people?" Maddox asked. "If Seraphina's planning to kill him." "Because Kalin doesn't just want to stop her," Dante said quietly. "He wants to destroy her completely, and for that he needs witnesses." Maddox's stomach turned. On the screen, Seraphina raised her champagne glass, giving a toast. Her voice was sugar and poison. "To loyalty," she said. The crowd echoed her, "To loyalty." Kalin raised his glass. But he didn't drink. At 8:30 p.m., everything changed. The lights in the ballroom flickered. Then the main screen, the one meant for displaying wedding photos, lit up. But instead of pictures, text appeared. Encrypted messages, bank transfers, offshore accounts. Every guest in the room went silent, staring. Then the messages began to scroll. Seraphina's messages. All of them. Every conversation with Lucian Crow, every plan, every betrayal. The room erupted in whispers. Seraphina's face drained of color. She looked at Kalin across the ballroom. He was already watching her. "Ladies and gentlemen," Kalin's voice cut through the chaos like a blade. I'd like to introduce you to my fiancée. He gestured to the screen. The woman you all feared, the woman who smiled while planning my death. Seraphina lunged for the exit. Kalin's guards blocked the doors. Every exit, every window. Sealed. Seraphina spun back around, her perfect composure cracking. Kalin, you don't understand. I understand perfectly. Kalin's voice was ice. You sold me out to Lucian Crow. You planted explosives in my home. You used an innocent Omega as bait. The crowd gasped. Seraphina's eyes darted around the room, searching for allies. She found none. Then another figure stepped into the ballroom. Lucian Crow. He'd come disguised as a guest, wearing a suit and a fake smile. But now his cover was blown. Kalin's guards surrounded him instantly. Lucian's hand moved toward his jacket. One of Kalin's lieutenants was faster. A single gunshot. Lucian dropped. The crowd screamed. Seraphina screamed. And Kalin stood perfectly still in the center of the chaos. What happens to Seraphina now? Drop your predictions. Blood pooled beneath Lucian Crow's body. The ballroom had gone from wedding celebration to crime scene in seconds. Guests pressed against the walls, some crying, some frozen, all trapped. Seraphina stood in the center of it all, her white dress stark against the chaos. She stared at Lucian's corpse. Then she started laughing. Not the elegant laugh she used at parties, something broken, manic. You think you've won, she turned to Kalin, her perfect mask finally shattered. You have no idea what's coming. Kalin didn't respond. Seraphina's hand moved to her clutch purse. 3 guards raised their weapons. Don't, Kalin said calmly. Seraphina pulled out her phone instead of a weapon. She held it up, showing Kalin the screen. A single button, red, pulsing. I had a backup plan, she said, her voice shaking with rage. If Lucian failed, if you figured it out, I made sure you'd die anyway. Kalin's expression didn't change. The explosives you found, Seraphina's smile was vicious. Those were decoys, the real ones are somewhere you'll never find in time. She glanced at her watch. You have 15 minutes before this entire building becomes a grave. The crowd erupted in panic. People rushed the exits. Kalin's guards struggled to maintain order. Kalin remained still, watching Seraphina. You're lying, he said. Am I? Seraphina's thumb hovered over the button. Want to test that theory. Dante appeared at Kalin's side, his face grim. So we need to evacuate, now. Kalin ignored him. He took a step towards Seraphina. You made one mistake, Kalin said quietly. Seraphina's smile faltered. What? You assumed I'd be here. Seraphina's eyes widened. That's when she noticed it. Kalin's suit, the way he stood, the calmness in his eyes. He wasn't scared because he'd never planned to stay. You bastard, she whispered. Kalin's smile was cold. The real party is happening somewhere else. This, he gestured to the ballroom, this was just a stage. Seraphina's phone buzzed. She looked down. A message from one of her contacts. Safe house compromised, target secured. Her face went white. What did you do? She demanded. Kalin's expression was merciless. I took everything you care about, your money, your contacts, your leverage. No. And Maddox, Kalin continued. He's already gone, safe, protected, somewhere you'll never find him. Seraphina's hand shook. She pressed the button. Nothing happened. She pressed it again. Nothing. Kalin held up a small device, identical to hers. We disabled your detonator 3 hours ago, he said. The only explosives left in this building are the ones my team controls. Seraphina's face twisted with fury. She lunged at Kalin, her perfectly manicured nails aimed at his eyes. Kalin caught her wrist effortlessly. You don't get to touch me anymore, he said. Federal agents poured through the ballroom doors. Not Kalin's men. Actual federal agents with badges and bulletproof vests. Seraphina stared at them in disbelief. Seraphina Vale, one agent said, pulling out handcuffs. You're under arrest for conspiracy to commit murder, domestic terrorism, human trafficking, and about 15 other charges. No, Seraphina whispered. No, no, no. They cuffed her anyway. She screamed, thrashed, tried to break free. But it was over. The agents dragged her toward the exit. As they passed Kalin, Seraphina spat at him. I should have killed you the day we met, she hissed. Kalin's expression didn't change. You tried, he said quietly. You failed. In the safe house across the city, Maddox watched the live feed on Dante's tablet. He saw Seraphina dragged away in handcuffs. Saw Lucian's body covered with a sheet. Saw Kalin standing alone in the center of the ballroom, untouchable. Maddox's hands pressed against his belly. The baby kicked. Strong, persistent. Dr. Kamani sat beside him. How are you feeling? Like I can finally breathe, Maddox whispered. The door to the safe house opened. Kalin stepped inside. He looked exhausted, blood spattered his suit, but his eyes were clear. He walked straight to Maddox. It's over, Kalin said. Maddox's eyes filled with tears. My siblings. Safe, all three of them. Dante's team has them in protective custody. You'll see them tomorrow. Maddox broke down sobbing. Kalin knelt in front of him, placing a hand on his shoulder. You're safe now, Kalin said quietly. All of you. Maddox looked up at him through tears. Why did you do all this, for me? Kalin's expression softened. Because you deserved it. But outside the safe house, in a car parked 3 blocks away, someone watched through binoculars. One of Seraphina's loyal contacts. The one who hadn't been caught. He pulled out his phone and made a call. The Omega's in the safe house on West Monroe. I can get to him. The voice on the other end was cold. Do it. If Seraphina's going down, the Omega goes with her. The man smiled. Then he reached for the weapon in his glove compartment. Will Maddox truly be safe? Comment what you think happens next. The bullet shattered the safe house window at exactly 11:47 p.m. Glass exploded inward. Maddox screamed. Kalin moved faster than thought, throwing himself over Maddox's body as 2 more shots tore through the wall. Get down, Dante roared, weapon already drawn. Dr. Kamani dropped to the floor behind the couch. Kalin's guards flooded the room, returning fire through the broken window. Maddox curled into a ball beneath Kalin's weight, hands protecting his belly, ears ringing from gunfire. Stay down, Kalin ordered, his voice steady despite the chaos. Another shot, closer this time. Then silence. Kalin lifted his head slightly, scanning the room. Dante was already at the window looking out, shooters down, rooftop across the street. How many? Just one. Kalin slowly lifted himself off Maddox. You hurt? Maddox shook his head, trembling violently. Kalin helped him sit up, checking him over anyway. No blood, no injuries. But Maddox was shaking so hard his teeth chattered. Breathe, Kalin said firmly. You're safe. That's what you said before. Maddox's voice cracked with panic. You said it was over. It is over. Then why did someone just try to kill me? Kalin's jaw tightened. He looked at Dante. Sweep the area. I want every one of Seraphina's remaining contacts rounded up within the hour. Yes, sir. Dante left with 3 guards. Kalin turned back to Maddox. This was the last one, I promise. You can't promise that. I can, Kalin's voice was absolute, because after tonight, anyone who even thinks about coming near you will know exactly what happens. By 3:00 a.m., it was done. 8 of Seraphina's remaining contacts had been found, some arrested, some convinced to disappear and never return. The shooter on the rooftop had been one of Lucian's old crew, a man with nothing left to lose and everything to prove. Now he was just another body in the morgue. Kalin stood in the safe house living room, watching Maddox sleep on the couch. Dr. Kamani approached quietly, his blood pressures stable, the baby's heartbeat is strong. Good. But he's traumatized, Kalin. He needs more than protection. He needs therapy, time, peace. Kalin nodded. He'll have it. Dr. Kamani studied him. You're really doing this, taking responsibility for a child that isn't yours. The child is innocent. That's not what I asked. Kalin was silent for a moment. I've spent my entire life building an empire on fear, he said quietly. I've hurt people, killed people, done things I can't undo. He looked at Maddox's sleeping form. Maybe this is how I start balancing the scales. 3 weeks later, the trial began. Seraphina Vale sat in a federal courtroom, wearing an orange jumpsuit instead of designer clothes. Her hair was pulled back severely, no makeup, no jewelry. She looked like a stranger. The prosecution presented evidence that took 2 full days to review: phone records, bank transfers, testimonies from people she'd threatened, video footage of her handing Maddox the suppressants, and the encrypted messages with Lucian Crowe, laying out every detail of their plan to murder Kalin and seize his empire. Seraphina's lawyer tried to argue coercion, tried to claim she'd been manipulated by Lucian. The jury didn't buy it. When the verdict came, it was swift. Guilty. Every charge. Seraphina didn't cry, didn't scream. She just stared straight ahead, her expression empty. The judge sentenced her to 40 years in federal prison. No parole. As the guards led her away, she turned and looked directly at the gallery. Kalin sat in the back row, watching. Their eyes met. Seraphina smiled. Not the elegant smile she used to wear. Something broken, something that promised she'd never stop hatting him. Then she was gone. That evening, Kalin returned to the safe house. Maddox was sitting by the window, one hand on his belly. It's over, Kalin said. Maddox looked at him, for real this time. For real. Maddox exhaled slowly. What happens now? Now you decide what you want. What do you mean? Kalin sat down across from him. You're free, Maddox, free to leave, free to start over somewhere else, free to raise your child however you want. And if I want to stay? Kalen's expression softened. Then you stay. Maddox was quiet for a long time. I don't have anywhere else to go, he finally said. That's not why I'm offering. Then why? Kalin met his eyes. Because you deserve a choice. Real one, not because you're scared, not because you owe me, because you want to. Maddox's throat tightened. For the first time in his entire life, someone was giving him power over his own future. I want to stay, Maddox whispered. Kalin nodded. Then you will. But in a maximum security prison 200 miles away, Seraphina sat in her cell. She'd lost everything. Her freedoms, her empire, her future. But she still had one thing. A contact on the outside. Someone who owed her a favor. Someone who could reach Maddox if she gave the order. Seraphina smiled in the darkness of her cell. This wasn't over. Not yet. Will Seraphina ever stop? Tell us what you think below. Maddox went into labor at 2:00 a.m. on a Tuesday. The contractions started slow, almost gentle, like the baby was politely asking permission to be born. Then they hit like freight trains. Maddox gripped the bedsheets, gasping, his entire body tensing with pain. Dr. Kamani was there within minutes, her team moving with practiced efficiency. Kalin stood near the door, watching. You don't have to stay, Maddox panted between contractions. I'm staying. Another contraction ripped through him. Maddox cried out, his back arching. Dr. Kamani checked his progress. You're at 7 centimeters, we're close. Close, Maddox sobbed, this is hell. You're doing great, Dr. Kamani said firmly. Just breathe. Hours passed. Pain, breathing, pushing. Maddox was exhausted, drenched in sweat, convinced he was dying. I can't, he gasped. I can't do this. Yes, you can, Kalin said from beside him. Maddox looked up, surprised to find Kalin had moved closer, standing right next to the bed now. "One more push," Dr. Kimani urged. "Come on, Maddox." Maddox bore down with everything he had left. And then, a cry. Thin, strong, unmistakably alive. Maddox collapsed back against the pillows, tears streaming down his face. Dr. Kimani held up a tiny, wriggling baby boy. "He's perfect," she said softly. She cleaned him quickly and wrapped him in a soft blue blanket before placing him in Maddox's arms. Maddox stared down at the baby. Dark hair, calm eyes, 10 fingers and 10 toes. "Perfect." "Hey," Maddox whispered, his voice breaking. "Hey, little one." The baby blinked up at him. Maddox started crying, deep, wrenching sobs that shook his entire body. Not from pain. From relief. From love. From the overwhelming realization that this tiny person had survived everything. "I'm sorry," Maddox whispered to the baby. "I'm so sorry for everything." Kalin stepped closer. He looked down at the baby, his expression unreadable. Then he did something that shocked everyone in the room. He reached out and gently touched the baby's tiny hand. The baby's fingers curled around Kalin's thumb instinctively. "What would you name him?" Kalin asked quietly. Maddox looked up at him. "I don't know, I haven't thought." "Take your time, you've earned it." 2 days later, Maddox sat in a comfortable chair in the safe house nursery, the baby sleeping peacefully in his arms. Kalin entered with paperwork. "What's that?" Maddox asked. "Guardianship papers." Maddox's breath caught. Kalin set the papers on the side table. "I'm not trying to take him from you. This just makes it legal that I'm responsible for his protection, and yours." "Why would you do that?" Kalin sat down across from him. "Because blood doesn't make family," he said quietly. "Loyalty does." Maddox stared at him, fresh tears welling. "You don't owe me anything," Kalin continued. "You don't have to stay, you don't have to let me help raise him. But if you do, if you choose to stay, I'll make sure both of you have everything you need." "You're really doing this," Maddox's voice shook, "taking care of someone else's child." "He's not someone else's child anymore." Kalin's gaze moved to the sleeping baby. "He's under my protection now, that makes him mine." Maddox broke down crying. Kalin waited patiently until Maddox could speak again. "I want to name him Elijah," Maddox finally said. Kalin nodded. "It's a good name. It means my God is Yahweh, it means hope." Kalin looked at the baby, at Elijah, and something in his expression softened. "Then Elijah it is." 6 months later, everything had changed. Kalin's empire still stood, stronger than ever. But the rules had changed. He'd issued a citywide decree. Any trafficking of omegas would be met with death. Any harm to pregnant omegas would result in immediate retaliation. The underground networks had learned quickly. Kaelen Rourke protected the vulnerable now. And crossing that line meant war. Maddox had stayed. Not because he had to. Because he wanted to. He'd started therapy, started healing, started building a life where he didn't flinch every time someone raised their voice. His siblings, Janny, Marcus, and Destiny, had been relocated to a safe apartment nearby. They visited every week. Destiny adored baby Elijah. Janny cried the first time she held him. Marcus just stood there looking at Maddox, like he couldn't believe his brother had survived. "You did it," Marcus whispered. "You really did it." Maddox smiled. "We did it." In her prison cell, Seraphina got word of everything. The baby's birth. Maddox's new life. Kalen's protection. She stared at the wall of her cell and laughed bitterly. She'd lost everything. And Maddox, the Omega she tried to use and destroy, had won. For the first time in her life, Seraphina understood what it felt like to be powerless. And it burned. On a warm spring evening, Kalin stood in the nursery, watching Maddox rock Elijah to sleep. Maddox hummed softly, his voice gentle and sure. Kalin had never imagined this would be his life. Protecting an Omega who wasn't his. raising a child who didn't carry his blood. But watching them now, Maddox and Elijah, safe and whole, he realized something. Power wasn't just about control. It was about what you chose to protect. Maddox looked up and caught Kalin watching. "What?" he asked softly. Kalin shook his head, "Nothing." But Maddox smiled like he knew anyway. "Thank you," Maddox said quietly. "For what?" "For giving us a chance." Kalin stepped closer, looking down at Elijah's sleeping face. "You gave me one too," he said. And for the first time in years, Kaelen Rourke felt something he'd never expected to feel. Peace. Sometimes the people who hurt you teach you what you'll never become. And sometimes the people you protect teach you what you always could be. Maddox had learned he was stronger than anyone ever gave him credit for. Kalin had learned that true power wasn't built on fear, it was built on respect. And Elijah would grow up knowing something most people never did. That family isn't always blood. Sometimes it's the people who refuse to abandon you. This is the end of their story. But it's also the beginning. If this story moved you, inspired you, or made you think differently about loyalty, family, and second chances, please subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss more stories like this. Drop a comment telling us what you learned from Maddox and Kalen's journey. Your words might be exactly what someone else needs to hear today. Share this story with someone who needs to know that survival isn't just about enduring, it's about choosing what kind of person you become on the other side. Thank you for watching, and remember, you are stronger than you know.